Thanks, Marcel. Um, Marcel, I have been in the corporate world for many years and then left that corporate world to essentially create a different lifestyle altogether because I went through a serious career burnout. And one of the things when I was in that corporate world was that I always wished I had more time. Do you ever wish you had more time?
Every single day of my life.
Yeah. And since then, the last 10 years, I've been in Puerto Rico building basically a team building retreat company. I work with a lot of corporate groups and focus on doing leadership retreats and team building. And one of the main things that I experience with most of those groups is they too would also like to have more time. So in the process of supporting those companies and organizations, I've found some interesting tips, and not only tips, but there are also things that I've tested out many years and that I find have been super impactful, especially during the pandemic. I found that the idea of expanding time really comes from a couple of key items. So any guesses on what those might be, Marcel?
I think one could be focus or mindfulness.
Yeah, so I would use the word presence. Because when we're distracted and we're like on devices, thinking about this, thinking about that, that actually speeds up time, because most of the time, the whole reason why we're multitasking is because we're telling ourselves there isn't enough time. Mm-hmm. And the more we tell ourselves there isn't enough time, the faster time speeds up. So it's a weird phenomenon, but the less you do multitasking, the easier it is for time to expand. So the more present you can be, usually it's far easier to get things complete. Like I used to be the person that had a to-do list where I'd get like 20% of this item done, 10% of that item done, 3% of this item done. And it was super frustrating, and time just continued to speed up because I never had enough time to complete. And it gives me anxiety when things don't get completed. So in that scenario, I would say that key number one is presence. Really taking time to be more present and not like doing away with the distractions. So for example, I don't have any notifications on my computer. They drive me nuts. They're constant disruptions. I'll keep my, since I have a retreat center and right now we have guests, I'm in my room, but I keep my door closed and my team knows that I'm focused on something when the door is closed. There are a number of ways that we could spend a whole hour just on the idea of being present, but I'll just start with that as key number one. The more present you are, the more that time sort of like expands. And what I mean by expand is it's not that it feels like a long time, and it's not that it's kind of a weird phenomenon as well, because time expansion is this idea where the day doesn't feel rushed, or the time doesn't feel rushed. It feels more expansive rather than feeling like awkwardly long. So if you're in a situation where you're doing something you don't really want to be doing, that can feel like just awkwardly long, and maybe like sitting in a doctor's office waiting to see a doctor, and you're there for 2 or 3 extra hours just to get in to see the doctor. Like that is not the idea of time expansion I'm talking about, where it just feels painfully awkward. I'm talking about the idea of where the whole experience expands, and your ability to experience it fully through all the senses, not just through the eyes or not just through what you hear, but like through the tastes and through what you smell and just the breeze across your arms. Like there's all these things that we can do to enhance our senses, but we put ourselves in environments that are like closed with no windows, no view. We prevent ourselves from being fully stimulated with all the senses. And this is also tricky because I just said number one key is presence and to not be distracted. But nature is not a distraction. If you're sitting and you're focused on something and you have nature around you, it's actually helping release endorphins to enhance not only the creative flow, but to enhance the hormone release that helps you feel more creative. So it is tricky. It's there were architects and designers for many years that designed schools without windows because they're like, we don't want to distract the kids. I had one of those schools, and that school unfortunately still has no windows. Um, it's a crazy concept, but coming back, key number one is presence. Number two would be to actually notice how often you're telling yourself, I don't have time. And so key number two is to do the opposite of what you think you have time for as it relates to your self-care. So an example of that is maybe I'm getting ready to give a presentation online or something, and I only have, 30 minutes, and I'm feeling like I really need to meditate, but I'm like, I only have 30 minutes and I don't have all my notes ready. And so I'm telling myself, I don't have time. I don't have time. The key is to catch that inner voice, because most of us are unconscious of that inner voice. And once you start to catch it, you'll notice how often you're telling yourself, I don't have enough time. And we already discussed that speeds up time. So my mantra now, or my commitment now, is every time I tell myself I don't have enough time, I do the opposite as it relates to my self-care. So I'll take that 10 minutes to meditate. And what I find is I usually have a 30 to 40% increase in productivity. I'm usually far more creative, and I can solve problems quicker, so that 10 minutes. So if I only had 30 minutes before my presentation, I've taken 10 minutes, I only have 20 minutes. I actually get my notes and my flow all sorted much faster, and I'm presenting with much more ease rather than going into it stressed, telling myself I don't have enough time, I'm not ready when I hit the presentation.